is completely absurd. But it's also completely Trumpian. Like Mike Lindell, he believes any vote against him is a rigged one. But Trump is the president of the United States, and he is already pushing the envelope during Tuesday's balloting in Minneapolis, a city that is still reeling from Trump's ICE raids. Federal election observers tried to talk their way into at least one polling place.
Jacob Mullis voted inside Powderhorn Recreation Center minutes before federal observers arrived. Perfect. An election judge came out to confirm who they were and make sure they stayed 100 feet from the building. Hennepin and Ramsey counties denied federal observers inside polling places, which is within the county's rights, so they had to be 100 feet outside.
I'm just telling you signage for where 100 feet is.
I have it. Do you want me to go?
That'd be great.
Sure, I'll be right back.
Good on her. And that could be just the beginning. This week, newly confirmed Attorney General and former Trump criminal defense lawyer Todd Blanche said the next federal election observers could be armed ICE agents.
Now, when it comes to ICE officers, you recently expressed some support to deploy them to polling locations, armed federal officers. Now, how do you reconcile that with, obviously, the federal law that prohibits federal law enforcement to be armed at these locations?
If you're here illegally, you are not allowed to vote. So I also am not sure of the uproar of the risk of having a Border Patrol or an ICE agent at a polling location or looking into whether somebody is voting that shouldn't be. If you are here illegally, you cannot vote. And so what's the risk?
The risk is voter intimidation, Todd Blanche. And it is all happening because Donald Trump wants it to happen. How prepared, when we talk about the federal overreach of them just showing up at places like this, are other states for this? Because Mr. Baxter knew what to do. That polling place worker knew what to do. Are you confident that election workers, administrators throughout the country understand that they don't have to participate in this?
So, look, this is where, I depart from some of the happy talk that you sometimes get. There is a tendency for everyone to want to say, well, don't worry, the poll workers will take care of it. Well, here's two problems for you. The first is that it's a lot to ask poll workers to stand up to the federal government. It's one thing if it's a bunch of guys in polo shirts like that, who are jokers looking to, maybe cause a little bit of a disruption, but otherwise fine. But let's imagine it's not that. Let's imagine it's ICE agents with guns, right? Let's imagine it is people with much more aggressive tactics, right? It's a lot to put on the poll workers. But here's the second problem, and I need everyone to pay attention to this. There are a lot of really good election officials, but Tina Peters was an election official. Republicans have been putting in key positions in key states and counties around this country election deniers. The election deniers are not just running for statewide offices. They're not just running for Secretary of State. They're running or being placed in these local election officials as well. So do I think that in Minneapolis we are in good shape? Yes. But what happens when you are in a state like Texas or in a state like Florida, where, the Republican Party sort of runs the state government, but also has infiltrated at a MAGA level into a lot of these local county positions? And that is where I worry that it isn't going to just be election officials standing up to the federal government. Remember, I mentioned we have won 21 cases. Department of Justice sued 30 states. There were 20 states that turned it over voluntarily, and those are the places I am in some ways more worried.
Yeah, that is terrifying. And then you have candidates like Mike Lindell, who, it is bonkers. They're coming at this, Mark, from all directions. And today, the Trump administration lawyers, they filed this request asking the Supreme Court to lift a second injunction against this executive order that was targeting vote by mail. What can you explain to us what the outlook is there? What are the stakes for voters in this case?
Yeah, so Donald Trump tried to put in place an executive order last year to take over voting. We sued, others sued, we won, and that was blocked. Then this year, he put it forward another executive order, and in some ways it's much more audacious, because what it seeks to do is to commandeer the U.S. Postal Service to require states to provide that voter data that we're beating them in court on when they're trying to go to the states, try to get the states to have to turn it over to the Postal Service, or else the Postal Service, wait for it, won't deliver you a mail-in ballot. Wow. So that has now been challenged in court. And the first of those cases to get to the Supreme Court was a case brought by Democratic attorneys general. And they won at the trial court. They won at the Court of Appeals. And the administration is asking the Supreme Court to set that aside. We are all waiting now to hear what the Supreme Court says. But here is my message. If you look at what the Trump administration is saying, they are not saying that the Supreme Court should rule their way because Donald Trump was right. They are not saying that the Supreme Court should rule their way because this was constitutional. Oh, no. They're arguing it's not ripe. That, like maybe the Postal Service will just tell to Donald Trump, no, we're not going to do what you want. Maybe Todd Blanche will say, you know what, Mr. President, on this voting thing, we're not going along with you. Maybe Mark Wayne Mullins at DHS will say, I don't care what the executive order is. I'm going to do the right thing by the American people. And so because of that possibility, the Department of Justice is telling the Supreme Court, you know what, Your Honors, there's nothing to rule on yet. Are no heroes. There's proud MAGA and scared MAGA. And they all are MAGA in the end. And so they will all try to subvert the outcome of free and fair elections. They are all on board with what Donald Trump is saying and lying about every single day. And we cannot give any of them the benefit of the doubt.
New Fox News poll shows the U.S. Senate race in Maine is competitive, even after a major change on the Democratic side, right?
Democrats are doing 5 points better this month with Jackson.
Troy Jackson.
Than they were with Graham Plattner.
Who knew? Troy Jackson, who replaced Graham Plattner in July, leads Republican Senator Susan Collins by 2 points within the poll's margin of error. Other recent Fox News polling has shown Democrats leading in several key Senate races in Georgia. Senator John Ossoff leads Republican Congressman Mike Collins by 13 points. In North Carolina, former Governor Roy Cooper is ahead of Michael Whatley by 9 points. In Ohio, former Senator Sherrod Brown leaves Senator John Husted by 8 points. In Iowa, State Representative Josh Turek is ahead of Congresswoman Ashley Hinson by 4 points. And in Texas, State Representative James Talarico leads Attorney General Ken Paxton by 3 points.
And then Troy Jackson by 2, of course. And you never know how things are going to go. There's also another race out there in Alaska where you have a very strong Democratic candidate there that may be far more competitive than Alaska usually is. But again, it's early. I always say it's early until after all the votes have been counted, and then you can actually see. But nobody knows how this is going to break. Republicans have a massive advantage financially going into the fall. We'll see, though, if that makes any difference or not, because right now things certainly look like they're trending Democratic.
Some of those other races, John, what jumps out to you in that poll?
I mean, certainly, again, one polling has been bad, but those are very good numbers for Democrats right now. And I think 2 states that just jumped out at me were ones that have sort of flown under the radar a little bit: Ohio and Iowa. These are 2 states that, 12, 16 years ago were the definition of battlegrounds, Joe, but they've really trended red in recent cycles. Trump has won them handily, particularly Ohio. Some Democrats thought well, we can't even play there anymore. But there is one Democrat who does win statewide there, and that's Senator Sherrod Brown. He lost, but now he's back and up 8 again. All the caveats, but that's very interesting. And in Iowa, too, where Democrats have the shot to win back the Senate and the governor's mansion in that state, another one that really had been going red in recent years. To me, those are huge warning signs for the GOP.
Well, you're right. I mean, I don't trust any polls right now. You look at these poll numbers, though, the ones that really jump out at me are the 2 that you talked about. Ohio seems to be gone. And listen, if anybody can win that race, Democrats have the candidate that can win that race there in 2026. He's a populist, and Brown, again, has built a really good rapport with working class people in Ohio. But +8, nah, it's not +8. I mean, I think if you look at Ohio and Iowa, if Democrats do happen to win those states because it's a wave, I'd be surprised if it was outside 2 points. I mean, those 2 states over the past 10 years have turned really red.
Thursday, 13 August in the year of your Lord, 2026. Right there. It is Fox News. Their polling is not the best, but it is Fox News. And it manifests something the war room has talked about for months and months and months. If the Senate does nothing and they treat President Trump as a lame duck, this is what you're going to get. If they can put that graphic up for a moment. Look at that graphic. We cut that. As we warn, Ossoff up 13 in Georgia. How's that working out for you? Kemp, in the Georgia establishment? How's that working out for you? Cooper, how's Watley working out in North Carolina? I think I said a couple of times, no name recognition, no energy, and the grassroots where he does have name recognition, the grassroots hate him. He's down 9. Sherrod Brown, what's the word there? Populist? Vivek, the governor's, disastrous governor's candidate. Vivek, Heritage Americans suck. Ramaswamy, he's pulling the whole thing down. Sherrod Brown, a populist, up 8. Iowa, up 4. Talarico, up 3. In Texas, Troy Jackson, up 2. Of course, everything we do in the Senate is protect. You got to protect Collins in Maine. You have to protect Collins. That's why you can't do anything. So how's that working out for you, Thune? Right here's the disaster. This is what I've said. If you want to save completely a absolute debacle, focus on these House districts, because I don't care how much Stephen Law and Mitch McConnell and how much the donors have poured money into here. If you treat President Trump as a lame duck, you don't do anything. People are not going to show up. There's zero enthusiasm for any of these candidates except for Paxton. We're going to get into that in a second. I've got Todd Bensman's going to join us. Also, Natalie is going to be with us this afternoon, the 5 o'clock hour. Natalie's got all kind of breaking stories, including she's turned her now investigative eyes and apparatus onto this situation with the out-of-control Marxist jihadists, and we focus on the jihadists in the 5 o'clock hour to go through all these disastrous moves by these radical Muslims in this country to take political power. And, of course, the radical left goading them on, and the Republican Party being unable to stop them. Daily Mail is a big story up today. Natalie kind of broke it yesterday in research she was doing about, foot washing in Dallas-Fort Worth Airport. Setting aside a special little side deal for Muslims to make sure, I guess, their feet are clean, some sort of religious ceremony before they get on planes. We're going to go into that in detail, and also the radicalness of the candidate in Michigan, but you notice Michigan ain't up there. I mean, Peters maybe, the Peters replacement with Mike Rogers and Abdul could be the race that saves it. But as of now, by Fox News, down big in 6 Senate seats. And we warned about this. And all the money in the world, they sit back and say, oh, well, we have $1 billion we raised from donors. It's the donors' policies that are turning people off. Let's get back to basics. Let's get back to populist nationalism. Let's get back to populist economic policies, conservative social policies, and nationalistic foreign policy, national security policy, and, wait for it, economic nationalism. If you do this, you're not going to have those poll numbers. And guess what? You don't have to spend $1 billion trying to convince people, because you ain't going to convince them. People are smart enough to understand. And this is why the lower propensity Trump voters that don't normally vote in midterms, they're not going to show up. They're certainly not going to show up in these Senate races. And this is a disgrace. The top 2, can you put that chart back up there? People don't need to see me yelling and screaming. Can we get my chart there? I got my chart. The first 2 are from my beloved South. 13 points. You wonder why they're talking about Ossoff as a presidential candidate to replace Newsom? He's up 13 points in a Fox poll against Kemp's. This is what the rhinos get you. A 13-point ass kicking. Not going to end up like this. But how obscene is that? North Carolina, good on you. We got a RNC chair that nobody knows. The people who know him don't like him. Down 9 to Cooper. Another total phony. Okay, Todd Bensman's with us. Tyler O'Neill on the arrest yesterday of the Southern Poverty Law Center, I think CFO. We got Dr. Jeffrey Tucker going to go to the White House. Rickard's going to join us. We're packed wall-to-wall day. Birch Gold, our sponsor. Want to thank particularly Philip Patrick coming on last night. You know, the Lakers sold for $12 billion yesterday. They said today on the morning joke, the Queens, the rock groups catalog sold for $1 billion. You know why? That's called the devaluation of the U.S. dollar.
War Room. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
If you, by the way, what I meant by that, the Lakers are $12 billion. The Queen's catalog, I'm not a Queen fan, but $1 billion. Are these things that much more valuable? Is it the drop in purchasing power of the dollar? I don't know. Jeffrey Tucker's going to be on here about COVID in a while. Dr. Jeffrey Tucker, I'm going to ask him because he did the great study, but the purchasing power's dropped 50% since Biden. 50%. Let me look at the numbers. People are flocking to hard assets. That's why you should look at gold. Birchgold.com/Bannon, end of the dollar empire. Also take your phone out, BANNON 989898. Get access to Philip Patrick and the team and do it today. I think it's time you had a conversation about gold as a still point in the turning world of finance. Now that the global bond markets are in turmoil, particularly over in Asia, make sure that that contagion will eventually get here. Think about it. World's largest margin call is coming. Todd Bensman, brilliant piece. So if you lose, I just go back. It's Fox News, folks. Fox News polls. They're not the best pollsters, but these are outside margin. If you lose Maine, North Carolina, and Ohio, right, as states we have, then you're down to that if you just lose those, you hold everything else. The vice president breaks the tie, but that makes Iowa, Kansas, Alaska, Nebraska, and Texas all important. Bensman, you've got a great piece up in people have to connect dots here, but this is what we do at the War Room. And thank God there's the Federalists and people like Todd Bensman and Heritage, all that. Todd, you spent years, you've dedicated your professional life either at Texas with law enforcement, the federal government, or as an independent analyst and expert, subject matter expert about the southern border, about the invasion, about migrants, asylum policy. You wrote the definitive book on jihadists coming across the border. You've written that amazing book with that awesome cover about Biden's policy. You really changed the direction of the nation of getting people awakened to this. And I think this is a brilliant piece, and nobody's talking about it, and we have to talk about it. They talk about Talarico as kind of a twerp, and, he's weird, and he's like from another planet and all that. Yes, that's all true, and that's going to play big in Texas. But most importantly, he is an absolute radical. People have to understand what he's going to be pushing and voting for, and your piece in the Sean Davis's Federalist Today lays it out. Talk to me about the invasion of our southern border, the 20 million illegal aliens we have here on Biden's watch, and how Talarico is really an apostle of that, sir.
Under the Biden administration, we had, 10 plus million people hit that border because they allowed them in. They were just allowing them in to make asylum claims. Trump shut the whole thing down in one day by denying them the opportunity to abuse the asylum system. That's the basic thing, and then expelling everybody. So the border is quieter than it's ever been in recorded history because no asylum and everybody gets expelled that we can lay hands on. Talarico comes in with this weird idea. I call it weird because it's so contradictory on its face. He says, we're going to put a welcome mat out and we're going to lock the door. Welcome mat, locked door. So I decided to dig into what does he mean by that? And there's plenty of material out there that he provides the public with what he means. He wants to bring back asylum claims at the border. That is an absolute guaranteed mad rush on the border. The second you start doing that, you invite the entire world over that border. That's what the Biden administration did. So he says the locked door, if you dig down, you drill in, but his locked door, what he means by that is we're going to very quickly do a fast track asylum determination on everybody that we let in. But there's no mention at all, glaring gap about deporting them if they're denied. And in fact, his policy calls for pretty much letting everybody in and never deporting anybody, leaving alone anybody who's not a hardened, convicted criminal or something, which is like most of the people that are coming across, which is basically an open border. It's Biden's open border. And I found that in his speeches, he's using the same terminology that the Mayorkas DHS used to use, that Biden used to use, safe, orderly asylum processes, the safe, orderly, and humane. I don't know how many times I brought that up on the War Room to the posse during those 4 years, but it was nonstop. That was their stock in trade. We're going to have safe, orderly processing at the border, which basically means everybody gets in. We're going to have more border patrol to just process everybody in. So when you really dig down into what he means by locked door, he doesn't provide for any deportation about people who are denied asylum, and that's an open border. And that's my whole point here, is that Talarico and people like him on the far left are using tough sounding terminology in order to lure in maybe Trump defectors, Trump voter defectors, and independents that might swing the election here in Texas. I'm in Austin. Enough.
No. He's looking for independents. Look, it's a midterm election. These are lower propensity voters. They're lower information. Doesn't mean they're dumber. It's just not, politics is not a part of their life, right? So this is the type of propaganda he's trying to sound. It's just like Mayorkas, safe, orderly, humane. It's open borders. He's got the welcome mat out, and this is what Lieutenant, General Paxton, the Attorney General, has got to start ripping on this. They got to expose Talarico for what he really is. He goes back to what's helped destroy Texas, this open borders policy, Todd. And I think that there's others. The situation in Michigan is the exact same. You notice Michigan's not on that chart. They're just starting to poll it now. I'm hearing pretty good news out of it. Not great news, but pretty good news. But people have got to start putting like the jihadists up in Michigan on notice. We have to field strip these people in front of the nation, and particularly in front of their states. You got to start telling exactly how they are, because they've got all the happy talk to kind of divert, particularly people that just don't follow politics that closely, Todd Bensman.
Right. And, he's running for Senate, U.S. Senate. He's not the president. He won't have charge for 2 years of that policy. But here's why it matters. If he wins, the polls are showing him a little bit ahead of Paxton at the moment. We saw what happened, what polls actually mean in Wisconsin in the governor's race with Hahn just recently. But he is promising that because he's from Texas, his family's from Laredo, he's saying, I should lead the charge on border policy. I should be the one, because I'm from Texas, I should be the guy. And so if that's the case, raising the question about what does he really mean by locked door welcome mat is a completely fair question to deconstruct.
It's absurd. Not just a fair question. The guy go rip this guy's face off. We're not looking for fair questions. Fair questions. This is partisan politics, baby. You got to get into it, because this guy's an open borders guy. Listen, you didn't get 10 to 12 to 13 to 20 million asylum seekers, migrants, illegal aliens in the country that's going to tear the country apart once we start doing what has to be done, mass deportations. Nobody wants to talk about that. Oh, because they're going to say something bad on MSNBC. They're going to put a camera in somebody's face, and somebody's going to say, wow, why are we doing that? It's got to be done, or you don't have a nation. You do not have a nation if we don't do this. And that's why it starts at the border, what President Trump has done. I want to go back for illusion. This is what Todd Blanche was saying. He says, I don't understand why people are upset. Of course we're going to have ICE agents, because people that are non-citizens can't vote. And of course, NBC comes back and says, well, that's intimidation. Why isn't it? It's intimidation. It should be intimidating to non-citizens. Yes, we want it to be intimidating to non-citizens. You should not go to a polling place. The Democratic model, Todd, as you know, is to flood the zone with people that are not eligible to vote. And this is why They can scream all they want and cry they want, throw their toys out of the pram, but this is going to happen. Todd, your thoughts on ICE agents at polling places?
I think ICE agents belong at polling places. They can go anywhere they want. That's their job. Their job is to find illegal aliens wherever they are. That's their job. We hired them to do that, and the law says that they have to do that. But you're right. Listen, if 278,000 are registered, non-citizens are registered to vote in just 4 states that we know of, that means, there's millions probably who are at least registered to vote. That is not just a problem. That is a catastrophe, because elections in this country these days are decided by a few thousand votes. Look what happened in Michigan. The guy won the primary by 1% or something. Who knows how many non-citizens voted in that thing? It might have been enough. And all of our elections are that close. So there needs to be a big crackdown on people who are registered. First of all, just to register, get rid of the automatic license, driver's license application registration function in all these blue states.
All be done.
Right.
Todd, we got to bounce. Where do people go to get your writings? Where do they go?
That's right. It's I'm on X at T Bensman, and also Getter, Truth Social, toddbensman.com. You can find all my material. I work for Heritage Foundation.
Yep.
Thank you.
You get the guys at Heritage. You're doing a great job. Incredible. It's up on the Federalist today. Sean Davis's Federalist. Fantastic piece. Todd Bensman, thanks for kicking us off. Tyler O'Neill, Southern Poverty Law Center, being arrested. Next.
A case against the former chief financial officer of the Southern Poverty Law Center. Can you please speak a little bit about what you've learned as part of that investigation, and if we should expect more charges?
So yes, today, my understanding is today there was an arrest made, and there is a new indictment that includes the former CFO of SPLC. I don't have any comments about whether, we've said from the beginning, everybody, not just me, but anybody who's talked about this case, like virtually every criminal case, the fact that an indictment is returned doesn't end the investigation. It's just part of the investigation in most cases, which is certainly true in this case. I think, as alleged in the indictment, this individual participated in the scheme as alleged. I believe she was part of the effort to open bank accounts in completely fictitious companies' names and make payments to individuals for reasons that were not that were not accurate as described. But I don't have. I think the indictment was unsealed this morning. I believe it was unsealed this morning. I think the arrest was this morning. I don't have anything to say beyond that, except to say that this is exactly what we said would happen in a case like this, which is that our investigators and the U.S. attorneys and the agents working the case can keep on working it even after the initial indictment.
Okay, Tyler O'Neill joins us. He wrote the definitive book on Southern Poverty Law Center a couple of years ago. He's in the process of updating it. He's also read the Daily Signal. Rob Bluey's great site. Remember, we had Rob on last week from the Steelers training camp. Tyler, the reason I wanted to have you on this morning, we love people. Good on you. You this was a called shot. You said this was going to happen. You also said, hey, look, they're probably going to start rolling up initially, I guess, people at at mid-level or junior level looking for big fish later. Walk us through what exactly happened yesterday, your understanding of it, sir.
Yes. So yesterday, federal officials arrested Heidi Bayrick. She is the former CFO of the Southern Poverty Law Center. She is alleged in the indictment to have not only been part of the conspiracy to set up this alleged wire fraud scheme and the bank fraud scheme to lie to banks, setting up these shell companies to hide payments to to members of groups like the Ku Klux Klan. And Bayrick herself allegedly was involved in a years-long romantic relationship with a neo-Nazi, a member of a neo-Nazi organization who is clandestinely receiving money from the Southern Poverty Law Center to the tune of $140,000. Now, this money was paid to this informant. And this informant allegedly was in a relationship with Bayrak. Bayrak then goes on to take the money. She shares bank accounts with this alleged informant and used about 66% of the couple's finances were received directly from the Southern Poverty Law Center in the way of this clandestine funding. So it was through one of these fictitious accounts that Bayrak herself is accused of taking money and using it for her own purposes in this romantic relationship with a neo-Nazi member.
But, and also the overall scheme was to essentially fund KKK, neo-Nazi groups like this to act racist when they're kind of withering on the vine, but to give them fuel so the Southern Poverty Law Center can continue to go out and point to and put it on a danger list. Charlie Kirk and Turning Point USA, the War Room, everybody associated with Charlie Kirk or ourselves as these demons, and kind of kick up false or phony racism or hate groups. Correct?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. So the main reason why I've been focusing on the SPLC for a long time, long before I knew that they had been clandestinely funding these members of the Klan and such, I had known because they constantly exaggerated hate in America. And it's exactly as you said. What you had with the SPLC, you had this system that was set up where they benefited from any sort of extremism they could point out to that would make them relevant. So when you are establishing yourself as an organization that monitors hate, and America slowly becomes less hateful on your watch, that is negative for your fundraising. So what the SPLC had to do, they had to find new hate to go after. And they decided to create a 1-2 punch. I mean, this was a really brilliant strategy on their part, where they put organizations that disagree with them. These are peaceful organizations that advocate for policies in the federal government that highlight problems that they see in the society. Organizations like the Center for Immigration Studies, organizations like Focus on the Family, like Turning Point USA, as you mentioned, like PragerU. And the SPLC decided that they would put these groups on a map with chapters of the Ku Klux Klan. And they say that this map reveals the infrastructure upholding white supremacy in America. What they do by doing this, it's a very brilliant and very nefarious strategy, because what they're doing is they're smearing these conservative organizations, suggesting that they're driven by a hatred that's similar to the Klan, and then by weaponizing their own history of going after the Klan, which of course, for the record, the Klan is one of the worst terrorist organizations in American history, and I'm glad that the SPLC was able to sue many of them into bankruptcy. But now the Klan barely exists. And the main thing here is, and what this indictment is showing, is that the SPLC is alleged to have propped up the Klan by sending money for things like buying Klan hoods, buying Klan robes, reimbursing someone for cross-burning expenses. So this is hate that is allegedly being funded directly by the SPLC in order to keep the SPLC relevant and shoveled through these shell companies in order to hide the purpose of this funding so that it doesn't look like the SPLC is propping up the very hate that it claims it exists to oppose.
And to have this list of War Room and Charlie Kirk and Turning Point and all these groups saying these are hate groups. You gotta try to tar them. Real America's Voice, all of it. Your theory of the case also. This is the CFO, and obviously she looks like she had this kind of. I guess it's bizarre that the informant of one of the hate groups or whatever is living with the CFO of the Southern Poverty Law Center. That's for another day. But your theory of the case also is that there's really the big fish, board members, others. There's a lot of very prominent people in this entire far left movement. Do you believe they targeted kind of mid-level below, that they're looking to tell her, hey, lady, you're looking at 20 years in a federal prison, so maybe we should have a chat, sir?
Yeah, I mean, my theory of the case, as you mentioned, they are working on, so this is now the third indictment. We've had two superseding indictments, and I believe this one is the first one to directly name an individual by name. And then, of course, she is now arrested. That means that the fire is on her. If she decides to rat out for more people in this alleged scheme, this alleged fraud scheme and conspiracy, then that means we're going to have more charges. I expect more arrests, more charges, more to come, because even in these indictments, you have clear statements from the SPLC CEO at the time, who is later acknowledging to the banks that these accounts were opened under fraudulent purposes. And when you have a statement like that, I expect at some point that Margaret Huang is going to have to answer for this. And so what they're doing, they're starting, and I would say Heidi Beirich is right in the middle of the organization. She was middle management. Yeah. And she was the one, let's not forget, who managed the whole hate map for years. She's the one who decided to put the radical traditional Catholic groups on the map that were then cited by the FBI. So this person is very central. And she's an interesting choice because now she no longer works at the SPLC. She has her own organization that is pushing things in its own right. So we're going to have to see. I think this is only the beginning. This is the first arrest in this case. We have other employees who are not mentioned by name, who are in the indictment, who are likely to be indicted directly as the case continues. So more to come. I think we can expect a lot more fireworks in this case. And there's a real question as to whether the trial actually happens when it is currently scheduled for October 5th.
Watch, she's going to be cutting a deal. She don't want to go to federal prison. Tyler, where did they get the book? I know you're updating it. Tell us about the timing of that is. And Daily Signal, where do we get your pieces, social media coordinates, all of it, sir?
Thanks. Yeah, I am glad to announce that I was able to update the book by my May 20th testimony before Congress. So if you buy Making Hate Pay, The Corruption of the Southern Poverty Law Center on Amazon today, you will be getting an updated edition that includes a short recap of everything that happened since I originally published the book in 2020, and that mentions this indictment and how it ties in to the overall story. But the key fact here, and this is the main point of the book, is that the SPLC is a morally bankrupt smear factory that routinely demonizes and defames conservative Christian organizations, putting them on a map with the Klan. They should not be trusted. I think it is very important that corporate America, big tech, government, even Democrats take seriously the fact that this is a really horrible organization that should not be cited as the authority on anything. You can follow my work at dailysignal.com and on X at Tyler2O'Neill. And I also have a Substack called The Woktopus.
Tyler, thank you so much. Great reporting. Look forward to having you back on. You've been all over this case and nailing it as it goes, or actually before it goes, which is even better. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you.
Thanks again for having me.
And appreciate Rob Bluey and the whole team over at Daily Signal. Great job. Dr. Jeffrey Tucker, Brownstone. So, Dr. Tucker, I got two things. I want to get this COVID thing. Look, can we get the tweet up and do a split screen with Dr. Tucker? Walk me through this. When this published yesterday, and then I actually last night I watched your interview. Walk me through this. Is this you're telling me that there's evidence now they slowed down everything because this wild conspiracy theory, the real reason for all this was to delay the onset of natural immunity during the COVID crisis?
Yes.
We've got a minute here.
Yes.
We'll continue on, but is that, should I put my tinfoil hat on? Or brother, you usually come with the facts. Are you just messing with me on a Thursday?
No, Steve, you actually know this. You know this if you think about it. You remember the hysteria that was met with great Jay Bhattacharya's study in April and May of 2020 when he showed that sewer prevalence levels were 10 times what they were saying. So why was there such panic? The reason for the panic is that they did not want endemicity to arrive before the shot was here. So the whole purpose was to delay and delay and delay, and prolong the pandemic, prolong the suffering, so that the vaccine would get all the credit. I find this to be shocking and scandalous. And when I've confronted officials who were there at the time, the FDA and NIH and HHS, they've all confirmed it. They said, yeah, of course, that was the whole point of flattening the curve, was to delay, to keep seroprevalence levels down. And even now, we have lots of evidence that by the end of 2020, the virus was entirely manageable. The pandemic conditions were over already, but they couldn't tell anybody that because they had a product to sell.
Hang on one second. We're going to take a short commercial break. Your head is about to blow up as Dr. Jeffrey Tucker walks us through it. Wow. In the War Room. Next.
We rejoice when there's no more. Let's take down the CCP. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Dr. Jeffrey Tucker from the Brownstone Institute joins us. I want to get this tweet back up. So, Dr. Tucker, take a moment, because to get resolution for this and make sure it never happens again, we have to have either indictments and trials or a commission. We have to do an organized effort to put all this out there so people can see exactly what happened and who's accountable. Because I know people are coming up to you now and saying, of course that's what. Just walk through once again all the efforts by Fauci and Collins and the entire deep state apparatus of the health, the health department of the government, all of it, which is just as deep state as the CIA and the FBI and all the intelligence apparatus. In fact, maybe actually worse, you could argue. They conspired, understanding they had the crisis that they wanted, and they wanted to go back to the parlor trick of a vaccine. And everything they told us was to prolong the actual event, the pandemic, stretch out as long as possible so that eventually you could get the vaccine out there and disseminate it and not just have traditional herd immunity. Is that basically your theory?
Yeah, flatten the curve always meant prolong the pain until the inoculation could arrive. That's why you couldn't stand 6 feet next to anybody, closer than 6 feet next to anybody. That's why you couldn't go to concerts. That's why you couldn't go to church. That's why they canceled the religious holidays, and that's why they kept the kids out of the school. It was to preserve what's called the immunological naivety of the population. Because if seroprevalence levels had risen above 50% or 60%, as they probably did by the end of 2020 anyway, then there would have been no reason for the shot. There would have been no demand for the shot and no purpose for it in the first place. Whereas they wanted universal injections of everybody, even though the gradient of risk of this particular virus was overwhelmingly towards the aged and infirm, and everybody else could experience mild levels of exposure and have an immune upgrade from it. That's what they did not want to have happen. They wanted to try out their pharmaceutical product. So when I fully realized this, and also what incredible explanatory power this model has, I mean, it's actually really obvious once you say it. I began to confront administration officials in private over this, practically screaming in anger, steam coming out of my ears. What, you destroyed the whole of society and economic life and stole half the dollar's purchasing power so you could get a product in people's arms? They said, yeah, of course. Yeah, everybody knew that at the time. That was the entire purpose of the pandemic plan, was to prevent people from developing protection, natural protection against the virus, so that we could have the experiment of the artificial protection through this try out this new gene therapy on the population, which we know now killed probably millions of kids in the womb on a global basis.
What is the action item here? Because we have, as brilliant as this is, this has to somehow get into some apparatus that can help us correct this, hold people accountable, put people in jail if necessary, but make sure it can never happen again. What is your recommendation for how we go forward in a plan of action to now present this and bring people in and have them testify? I don't know if it's Congress, the Senate, if we just go right to the criminal process. I'm looking for your thoughts on this.
Steve, there has to be a reckoning, and it has to be a sweeping kind of reckoning, and there has to be absolute transparency and honesty, and no more this weird thing that we have going, where everybody's somehow running and hiding or pretending as if they did the best they could with the knowledge they had at the time. This whole thing needs to stop. We need to drop everything. I think drop everything and focus exclusively on this, and get a full reckoning for how it is that we abolished the Bill of Rights for 2 or 3 years in this country and destroyed so many lives to protect pharmaceutical industry's profits and to try out new tricks at censorship. I mean, this is a grotesque period. And, hearings, yes, of course, law enforcement needs to be involved. Every last document needs to be distributed. Rand Paul is doing fantastic work. Now, Senator Johnson has Fauci's cell phones, but this is just the beginning. There is so much more to be known. We need maximum transparency, and it needs to happen now, and people need to demand it, and the representatives need to get it involved. I sense that we're taking steps in this direction, but we're not there yet.
Baby steps. Baby steps. We got Dr. Tucker. If we don't do your remedy to the fullest extent that we can possibly do it, and that means all the way in, well, this will clearly, with that same apparatus in place and with Big Pharma as powerful they are, this will happen again, correct?
Well, Steve, Moderna is already developing a vaccine and testing a vaccine for what's called H5N1, or the avian bird flu, which, so far as we know, doesn't really reliably move from animals to humans. Why would they be doing that? What is going on? This is one of something like 13 products they're in development of. Why are they developing an avian bird flu vaccine? Why are they in trials for this thing? And how do you even conduct a trial for this thing? So my thinking is how do you make avian bird flu more transmissible to humans? Gain of function research, right? So the scam, we know the way the racket works, and it's still ongoing. Moderna's still getting contracts from the federal government and still engaged in this research. It definitely will happen again with a man-made virus and more mRNA gene altering shots pushed on the population by gene therapy, shots pushed on the population by force. It's coming.
Dr. Tucker, if I can impose upon you, I want to hold you through the break. We are going to go to the White House, but Dr. Tucker's going to come with us. He had a brilliant analysis off of some research that was done about a month ago about the purchasing power of the dollar. Dr. Tucker is an economist. I want to tie the $12 billion price of the Los Angeles Lakers, the $1 billion price of the Queen music catalog, all of it to your personal life. We're going to take a short commercial break. This is the best time. Allfamilypharmacy.com. Stop the stranglehold of Big Pharma, and particularly the drugstore chains and the big distribution companies, upon your life. Allfamilypharmacy.com/Bannon. Use code Bannon. You get 25% off. Michael Kunstler and the team want to show you a new way to get the medicines you want and you need under licensed medical professionals and pharmacists. Allfamilypharmacy.com/Bannon. Use code Bannon25 for 25% off.